I'm going to talk to you guys today about the evangelism of the arts. And this is kind of like the arts with a capital A, because we're talking about music, we're talking about visual arts, train dance, all sorts of things, the way this can be used in worship and why it's important. Here at school, we do a lot of talking on scripture-led worship. This is the most important thing. Dr. Kreider does this. It's what forms us as a congregation. Daniel Block said, we are putting words in people's mouths. So that's the most important thing, are the words that we're conveying through worship. But usually when we're talking about scripture-led worship, everybody has this kind of aside that says, also you need to use a good singable melody. And then we move on. And so I'm here to talk today about what is that? What is a good singable melody? What is good music? What is singable music? We're even going to get so far philosophically as what is music? Why do we use this in worship? Okay, so why is this important to the church today? So let me see if I can get my clicker going. Let's try this. Here we go. Feel the power. All right, so I'm going to start out with some quotes, and if you know me, I will go from 0 to Tim Keller quote in like 3.5 seconds, because Tim was my pastor in New York until he retired in like 2016, 17, something like that, and he is a huge influence on my life and why I chose to come to seminary, actually. So what does Tim Keller say about Christian artists? He said, we need artists because we can't understand truth without art. So art takes over where reason leaves off. Reason tells us the truth, but we have a hard time grasping the truth. So art fills in this gap. When you listen to great music, you can't believe that life is meaningless. Your heart knows what your mind is denying. We need Christian artists because we are never going to reach the world without great Christian art to go with great Christian talk. So that's Tim's view on this. But non-Christians also have this in their hearts as well. They know what this is. Leonard Bernstein, not a Christian, but he understood the power of music. He said, music can name the unnameable and communicate the unknowable. So what is this thing called music? Well, let's look to science first. Science, we're not talking about the words, we're talking about music itself. Music is sound, all right? But not all sound is music. Kind of like that saying that all puppies are dogs, but not all dogs are puppies. It's not just the organization that makes the difference. John Cage, avant-garde composer, he organized sounds, but very few people would say that's actually music. So music is an organized sound that produces an emotional reaction in our brains. Science says that when we listen to music, we have just this big flash of dopamine in our brain. It's a big dopamine hit. You know this. Your 5-year-old niece that listens to Let It Go in the car on constant loop, she knows this. Listening to that, it's like crack to her, all right? So her brain is just going up. You know you like it too, all right? Now, non-Christian scientists, they have a very difficult time explaining why our brains react this way. Macroevolutionists, they try to say, well, maybe it has something to do with our fight or flight response, but they don't know. The explanations kind of peter out. So let's go to another resource. Let's see what the Bible says that music is. So let's look at this quote from Ephesians. Instead, be filled with the Spirit, speaking to each other with psalms, hymns, spiritual songs, sing and make music from your heart to the Lord. So this is basically saying, if your heart is working right, you will be singing. When the Spirit of God is really working in your heart, you automatically sing to God. You see this with little kids, like especially little kids. For those of you that work with little kids, they're always singing, right? It's automatic. It just flows out of us. So a singing heart is worship. It's our reaction to and our communion with God. So another way that Tim Keller likes to put it, we see God's worth and we give him what he is worth. What does this mean? Let's go a little bit deeper. What is music's purpose? All right, music points us back to paradise. In Alan Ross's book, which I'm studying in Dr. Kreider's class right now, Recalling the Hope of Glory, he calls this the memory of paradise. And he directs us to Job. He says, where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Skipping ahead, where were its footings set? Who laid its cornerstone while the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy? So music was created before we were created. Ross then points us to Revelation, into the Bible. There's a series of 5 hymns sung by the heavenly choirs. We're all going to join in, every creature under the earth, above the earth, around the earth. Everybody's going to join in this musical doxology to the triune God. I happen to like the way Psalm 96 says it. Then shall the trees of the wood sing for joy before the Lord when he comes back to rule the earth. So do you see how music is both the memory of paradise that we've lost, and it's the hope of the paradise that is to come? So music is hardwired into our very souls by God for this reason. Science cannot explain this, and it was used for worship before we were ever here, before God created us. We messed everything up with the fall. It's broken now, but because of Christ's sacrifice, God is going to restore the music of creation and restore the music of our hearts. Now, this has been a lot of words. I think there's a better way to say it without using a lot of words. Hugo, if you'll cue the video. Shawshank Redemption. Andy snuck into the office and started playing Mozart for the prison.
Andy, let me out. Andy? I have no idea to this day what those 2 Italian ladies were singing about. Truth is, I don't want to know. Some things are best left unsaid. I like to think they were singing about something so beautiful it can't be expressed in words, and makes your heart ache because of it. I tell you, those voices soared, higher and farther than anybody in a great place dares to dream. It was like some beautiful bird flapped into our drab little cage and made those walls dissolve away. And for the briefest of moments, every last man at Shawshank felt free.
That clip always gives me chills. And Morgan Freeman always says things better than any of the rest of us could ever say it. That's why he sells insurance. All right? So what he's basically saying, music is pointing us to paradise. All right? This is in us. So let's move on from here. We've discussed why music matters so much to us. It's hardwired into us by God. It points to him and his glory, and it points us to worship. Now, let's head to the church where we put worship into practice. How much does music matter to the congregation? Let's go on to here. Oh, and that's just in case the video didn't work. It's just text. All right, so music in the church. How much does it matter? Well, this is from an article in Christianity Today that I read recently. They did a poll in 2017. 74% of American church attendees consider music in their decision to attend a church. It's pretty evenly split. Some say it's a major factor, some say it's a minor factor, but think about that. 3 out of 4 people, they choose a church based on the music. Now, Christianity Today says most worship leaders are aware that music can play a key role in gaining and keeping attendees, even if that should not necessarily be the case. And this is actually where I disagree with them. I think it is very much the case. Music is important. All right, we've already seen that we're hardwired for music, and there's other ways that it's important too. It shouldn't be the primary thing, but hey, it's important, all right? So how a congregation uses music to sing, well, this is a command from God. Let's see how a congregation uses music. All right, this is stuff you guys know already. We are talking about congregational song first, okay? So this is participatory worship. We are commanded to sing. Look at Psalm 96. Sing to the Lord a new song, all the earth, keeps going on. So what Tim Keller says, one of the ways that we build Christian beliefs into changed character is prayer. There's probably more places in the Bible that commands that practice of prayer than any other. But the second most commanded Christian practice in the Bible is one that when you see it, you don't even really recognize it as a command. We are commanded to sing God's truth, to sing his praises. Number 2 in the Bible. So number 1 is pray. Number 2 is to sing. So what do we sing when we're together? Well, let's talk about music. We sing melodies, unison tunes with words to it. So what is a melody? What makes that different than just a random string of notes or a single note intoned in a chant? Well, melody has shape and contour. This is stuff that you kind of learn in your music theory classes. It has a sense of inevitability. You have direction. You also have like a little bit of a surprise element, the hook that really makes it sink in and stick with you. So let's go back to science for a minute. So science, let's see, where is this? Because a melody is memorable, melody unites us. And this is what science backs up. This is all part of that dopamine hit in your brain. All right, so when you do unified singing, that part of your brain lights up. My friend Harrison Hollingsworth, that leads the music at the Downtown Redeemer location in New York, he says even skeptics understand the value of communal singing. Non-Christians, we know the value of it. Everyone does. But Christians believe that there's something more at work when we sing together. So that's pretty simple. Together means we all need to participate in it, though. If everyone follows God's command, we do it together. So let's help the congregation do this. So take the handout, or you can just look at the screen if you'd like. We're going to look at this one. Does your church sing well? Well, this depends on your culture, really. On the whole, America is not a singing culture. We're not like the Welsh in Great Britain or the Maasai tribe in Africa. Singing is built into the fabric of their societies. America used to sing more. Leonard Bernstein, to quote him again, he said, "In the old days, everyone sang. You were expected to sing as well as talk. It was the mark of a cultured man to sing." And it's not like that anymore. And you see this on Sunday morning. Most of us are up front, leading worship in some capacity. When we look out, what do we see? Do we see only a few people singing? Sometimes it's our own fault. Sometimes we make poor music choices for our congregations. And this can be in any musical tradition or style. So I'm going to pick on traditional. So let's pick on traditional for a second. We're going to look at "And Can It Be?" Now, I love this hymn, but how many of you have never sung this hymn before? Raise your hand. And oh yeah, this is going to be good. All right, Caleb, come on up. Caleb's going to help us. He's going to lead us just through one verse of "And Can It Be?" All right, so follow it on the screen. You can follow it here. And I'll just do the last line for your intro. Yeah. Great. You guys did a beautiful job. Thank you, Caleb. You can kind of hang out here. I'll need you again in just a second. So I like the song. It's a really nice melody, but it's hard for the congregation. How many of you, when you got to that arpeggiated thing for the refrain, were like, what the heck is going on? All right. I always kind of get the giggles when we do this one in church because the people around me, some of them struggle. Most of them just clam up completely. All right. So we've got a great message here. Not the best music choice. Now, I'm using this one as an example. The more we utilize poor congregational music choices in worship, the more comfortable the congregation gets in just standing there with their mouths closed. They are forgetting the past and the future hope that is expressed in music through God's command to sing, all right? And we are enabling them to forget. This is why congregational music choices matter. So what are good music choices for a group, all right? What is a good singable melody, again, for a group, not for solo? Here I go to Alice Parker. She is a terrific choral music writer. She's still alive at like 97 or 98 years old, living in Massachusetts. She still teaches some workshops on how to compose choral music. She has a terrific book called The Anatomy of a Melody. I'd encourage any of you that are interested in songwriting to look this out because she really gets into details about contour and shape of melodies. It's really interesting. But she says some of the best communal music, that's stuff that we sing together, is folk tunes, all right? We sing them to kids. They can remember them. They have strong shapes, memorable lines, and they're singable because we have been singing them for centuries, some of them. All right. One of the particular genres that I love that I think is highly underutilized in today's church is African American spirituals. We do not do enough of these. And usually the text is pretty simple, but when you start relating the text with the music itself, beautiful music, you have this synthesis of one feeding off the other, also knowing the story behind it that really just makes it soar. So turn your sheet over if you've got a sheet. I'm going to click on over to the next one, which is one of my favorite spirituals that we would do. Let's see, are you on? Did I hit something, Hugo? Thank you. All right, I'm sorry it's a little bit crooked. So this is just from one of the old church bulletins that I still have in my files from New York. We would sing this congregationally. Caleb, come on up. We'll just do the first verse. I'll give you four measures. So here we go. Beautiful. Thank you very much, Caleb. I appreciate it. All right, so you look at the text, very, very simple. Some people might even say it's too simple for congregational singing. What does this teach us about doctrinal truth? Can this instruct our congregants? But look at the melodic contour, especially the yearning when we get to the give me Jesus part. All right, so that's what transforms this text into something glorious. The text does not have to carry all the weight of the message here. The melody does the heavy lifting in this part. So this is the synthesis of music and text that they're talking about. Each one informs the other. And this is just a simple anonymous spiritual. And here's a theory of mine. Folk music has strong melody. It has to have strong melody because it's oral transmission, all right? So you have to be able to remember it easily. Folk melody is the music of peasants, slaves, and people who struggle, but who are often very strong Christians. So maybe their music is reflective of that. Strong character builds strong music. I don't know. That's an idea I'd like to explore more. But it's also because it's what makes the Getty hymns of today so good. All right, the Gettys are Irish. The Irish wrote the book on good folk melodies. Think Danny Boy, okay? So the Irish also know how to use a melody that is terrific for communal singing, memorable. And of course, the Gettys, they have a great text. So all I have to do is mention, Speak, O Lord. You've got that tune in your head and you've got the text with it. All right, so what are our congregational melodies doing? Are they uniting us in worship? Or are they causing us to remain silent? And is difficult music, like And Can It Be, is this a bad thing? Well, I think it depends on context. So this is going to bring us to the second point. So we talked about congregational singing, but now we need to understand that music is not just communal, it can also be art, which is a skill requiring excellence. So let's see. There we go. Why do we need excellence in worship? Well, there's a reason. It's also a command. It's in the Psalms. Sing joyfully to the Lord. It is fitting thus to praise him. Skipping on down, play skillfully and shout for joy. So skillful and joyful singing. Skillful means it's done well. Joyful means it's done from the heart. All right, so it's a command, and it says it's fitting for us, which means it fits you. It's what you spiritually need. This is where professionals, music professionals, come in to help with this. All right, so we have arts professionals in the churches. A lot of us are the arts professionals in our churches. Who are they? Pretty obvious. We got the choirs. They sing complex musical ideas, have to be learned and practiced before the service. All right. We also have instrumentalists, like what my sister and I do. We play both hymn arrangements. We play classical music. If the church asks for it, we play Brahms and Beethoven within a service. I let the music ministers decide that. They know their congregations best. So then we also have worship bands. So all of these people are trained musicians. And why are professionals important, especially in large churches? Well, this is where things get a little tricky. Large churches that focus on excellence in worship attract more non-Christians. This is another Tim Keller quote. So he says, a non-Christian is attracted to the art of a tight-sounding worship band or a string quartet. We are hardwired for this. Non-Christians, they see it. They're hardwired too. Non-Christians are not, in general, attracted to smaller, close-knit churches where the Sunday morning music special might be Brother Joe's 7th grade nephew who is learning the clarinet and is playing A Mighty Fortress is Our God and squeaking that out, all right? This music, it's not bad. It's meaningful for the congregation. The Brother Joe, members of his church, they know and love the nephew. They're a community, and they love the truth, all right? But for those who are non-Christian, who don't have a relationship with anyone in the church or with Christ, it just makes them uncomfortable. Hashtag awkward, okay? So I would go, this is also Tim Keller, I would go so far as to say, when planting a church, you determine its future size by the importance you place on aesthetics and worship. And this is just a fact. It's part of human nature. Doesn't necessarily mean it's good or bad. What do we do with it, okay? Bigger is not better. Big or small, each has its purpose, and it's pleasing to God if the attitude is right. So squeaky clarinet, if his heart is in the right place and he's doing it from a place of true worship, that means more to God than the bass player at, the church with the fog lights and all that kind of stuff who's just like, dude, I'm just here for the gig, just here for the money, okay? So attitude is everything. Joyfully. Remember, we're commanded to do this joyfully. Using professionals is also biblical. And sometimes we do have to argue that we need to be paid for our work, paid for our training for what we do, and it's in the Bible, the Levites, all right? So skilled musicians just provide more opportunities for varied aspects of worship. Doesn't make it better or worse, we just provide more opportunities. So what does that mean? Did I go too far? I might have gone too far, hang on. Maybe not. Okay. So more opportunities to attract and to keep people in the church, in the congregation. If you have a choir, that's how else this can be useful. If you have a choir or a worship band, they can offer musically more complex works. So like the hymn we just sung, the one where the congregation is really not going to be able to participate in this, well, you can have your choir sing it, sing arrangements of it. I think the a cappella group is doing a Dan Forrest arrangement of it right now. The melody is tricky, but the message is great. They can still have a chance to do this. So the choir can do this. And can people just listen and worship? This is where, things get a little complicated, because I've heard some people say, no, you have to be singing in order to worship. But no, you can listen. Look at what Paul says. I'll sing with my spirit, but I'll also sing with my mind, all right? What is worship? Going quickly through this, it's your mind, your emotion, and your will all working together. So why do we want artists in the church? Well, another good reason, they can just sing better. You guys did a great job on And Can It Be? For those of you that had never heard it, did a nice job. So if you're in a congregation and you're not even up on the stage providing worship in that way, you can help out just by being in a congregation and filling out the voices within the congregation. My dad, he's not tone deaf. He has about 3 or 4 notes, but they all sound remarkably similar. And he loves singing in the congregation beside these 2 guys that sing like really loud baritone and another really loud tenor. And he's just like, man, I sound awesome when I sing in between those 2 guys. All right. So that helps. You guys help out. So let's move on to non-believers. What do non-believers see in the arts? This is the evangelism part. All right, my title. So we're communicating the gospel through the arts. So art has a mysterious way of getting around man's intellectual and emotional prejudices. The boundaries we've all set up deep in our hearts ever since the fall. This is a Robert Short quote. C.S. Lewis also said that his imagination was baptized when he was still an atheist because of excellent Christian art. So how does it do this? Well, it creates wonder, all right? When we are viewing, listening to great art, people begin to wonder if the ideas that inspired it are true, just like Leonard Bernstein back at the beginning, all right? And why do we need this sometimes? After all, we have words, but words are very blunt. They're very indirect. They're great, but sometimes we need a backdoor way, something that's a little bit more indirect, a little bit more subtle. I'll show you how, all right? Here's a quote. This is what's in the screen right here. Wordy little quote. The church needs to examine its strategy of communication. The objection that all of us have to the gospel message is the same thing, a universal hardness of the heart that lies so deep within us we can't even comprehend it. In its urgent zeal, the church often bluntly whacks people over the head with the gospel message and shatters the delicate opportunities for the gospel to be truly heard and received. That's a great quote. I enjoy it. For a lot of you, you're just like word, 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 and it goes right over your head. Well, that's where Charles Schulz come in. He takes the exact same concept and in 4 panels and like less than a dozen words, same idea. All right. This is using art to help communicate the message of the gospel. It was also the Shawshank clip. I spoke for 5 minutes, but that clip is something that you remember. You can take that away. All right. So this is how art works in the church. So let's recap for a second. We've seen that art and choosing good art and good music is effective in worship in several ways. And all of these ways start with the letter P. So I'm starting to feel like a pastor right now. So number 1, it points us to creation. Number 2, it pleases God. It's command. Number 3, it provides good melodies to sing together, which unites us. Dopamine hit, let it go. And it publicizes and promotes the gospel message in indirect ways. The last one's a little thin, but it was started with a P, so I went with it. Now, let's talk about the 500-pound gorilla in the room. All right, that's an American phrase for the thing that we all know is there, but nobody wants to talk about because we don't want to spark chaos and frenzy. The evangelical church in America has had a somewhat tenuous relationship with the arts. Why is this? Well, I found 3 reasons. The first one, arts are not quantifiable or measurable. This is problematic if you happen to be in a church that is CEO model driven, business driven, all right, numbers generated. So music and art usually get pushed aside or over-regulated, and those with no knowledge of its uses will put it in favor, get rid of it in favor of entertainment with quick and shallow results, all right, because they want the numbers, so you can't measure them. Number 2, there's always the danger of art and skilled music becoming an idol, all right? What is an idol? An idol is a good thing that we make an ultimate thing. So good things, we've got money, power, influence, love. These are all good things. But when you place them above God, they start to take over and it becomes an ugly thing, all right? Music can do that very, very easily. It can become corruptible, all right? So it is a real danger, something to be afraid of. You can go too far the other direction, however, and not allow any art to occur because you're afraid of what might happen. Then you lose significant elements of the nuances of life, imagination, and beauty. So an entire congregation loses out on the opportunities to see beauty and creativity. The third reason is kind of interesting, music psychology. So John Powell has a book, Why You Love Music, and he says that music psychologists, which I was like, what, they exist? We have music psychologists. They analyzed and found that music can be placed into 4 groups. And these groups are driven by your personality and by your culture. So the first group, reflective and complex. This is classical, jazz, folk, and blues. All right, so this is complex music. Number 2, intense and rebellious. We've got rock, alternative, heavy metal, Kurt Cobain, those kind of guys. Number 3, upbeat and conventional, pop, soundtracks, religious music, that's where this falls, religious music, and country, which I don't know about country, how much they've listened to, because there's an awful lot of dogs dying and dads dying in country music. But okay, it's upbeat and conventional. And the last one, energetic and rhythmic. So you've got hip hop, electronic, rap, and soul music. Who listens to what in these groups? Well, for the reflective complex, this is what the music psychologists discovered. They usually are very open people, but introverted, poor at sports, oh yeah, good with words, maybe, and often politically liberal. Intense, rebellious, the same as above, also liberal, but they happen to be good at sports. Yeah, maybe, all right. Upbeat, conventional, they're extroverted, thoughtful, good at sports, and often politically conservative. So that means if you like country music, you have to be able to play football. And number 4, energetic, rhythmic. They're also extroverted, agreeable, and politically liberal. All right, so looking at these, notice there's only one group that is politically conservative. The other 3 are politically liberal. That brings us to the Great Divide. Okay, Western society, and I'm talking just Western society right now, we are very politically divided. If you've watched the news lately, you see this. We are becoming more and more polarized and more radicalized. And churches are just reflective of our society. They're also becoming more polarized. This means musical styles will become more polarized. So common sense will just tell you that people in churches in the extreme categories of the political spectrum, conservative and liberal, will naturally dislike and avoid music appreciated by the others, by the other guys, all right? That's just human nature. But this means that some evangelical churches have avoided all reflective and complex music, as well as the other categories too, because the listeners historically tend to be liberal-minded, okay? Or they're afraid of what the music might become as an idol in a church, or they just don't see why they should invest in the arts. As artists, you guys know this, we're both poor and expensive at the same time, all right? So are we worth that? Well, if there aren't artists, believers lose out and non-believers lose out. So let's see how. What is lost if there's no artists in the church? Well, sometimes you lose out on the artists themselves. We are talking numbers, it's not a lot, but it's a loss. Believers who work in the arts, some of them are forced to make a choice between churches to attend because of musical styles. It's a difficult decision because artists, we all have a built-in need to share our art. And if we're Christians, we desire to serve with our art, whatever that art is. So if a skilled arts professional leaves a biblically grounded evangelical church for a liberal mainline Protestant church, who else loses out besides possibly the artist? Well, the congregation loses out if they lose these artists to other denominations. Remember how we are commanded to make music because the discipline of it, like prayer, it helps form our Christian character, and that changes our actions. Music unites us. It points us to things that are higher and greater to than ourselves. It points us to paradise, to our Creator. So if artists leave, congregations don't have as much access to this. And it's these things which point us to transcendent worship. And then finally, non-believers, they lose out. Christ has sent us to make disciples of all nations, Great Commission, and the non-believers, they're watching us. They see our reactions to who we worship and what we worship and how we worship, all right? If we are Christ's body, his representatives here on earth, What are we representing? What are we showing to non-believers? Are we fully representing God's gift of art, beauty, and creativity, skilled music, to the best of our abilities at the present time, whatever those abilities may be? And can a non-believer see it? Can they see that we practice what we preach, that these things are important to us? So there is a way forward. There's hope. And I'm using an article by Brett McCracken, which, if you guys don't know him, he is a terrific young author and a movie critic, professional Christian movie critic. Those exist too. But he writes really intelligently on just using all sorts of different artistic and creative mediums within Christian worship. So he has books on Amazon. He also writes for the Gospel Coalition website, those sort of things, but really, really great stuff. And so I loved his list. I couldn't say it any better than what his list is. So how do we renew arts in the church? What's the steps? All right, so first thing, support your local musicians. The easiest thing you can do is just give them attention. Artists, we rarely get it. Now in school, it's kind of built in, it's part of our curriculum, and churches, they give us platforms because it's part of, schooling, and they're training us, all sorts of things. But when you get out in the real world, it's hard, all right? So churches need to see artists, and so that's part of, if you're a music minister, if you're a worship leader, you need to engage them, whoever they are. Make sure you're using them. Because, like in the little green box, the worship leader position is not just a Christian radio cover band. You're a teacher. It's a teaching position. You are forming your congregation. So guide people, and guide them as well in good melody, good music, and how to listen well. I also liked his Eat Less, Eat Real. He's from California, so, I'm sure he's like vegan or something. But this works for music. Eat less, eat real. What is your daily art consumption? Do you have a daily art consumption? Music, art, whatever we choose, should be healthy for our souls, for our families, and for our culture. Don't fill up on empty calories. Create a disciplined habit to listen better. All right, next thing, renew interest in arts patronage. This is not philanthropy. Philanthropy is driven by they need to see results. They throw money at you, but they want to see what the money does. That's not what we want here. We want patronage, which is really slow to gauge, all right? But patrons support arts and artists because of personal reasons. All right, so they are invested in you, and it's a relationship. They're connecting with you and supporting your art for whatever reason. They know you, they like you, or they just are discerning about good music. That's nice. Brett says that if churches continue to push artists to other communities for support, we will continue to feel like we are fighting culture instead of creating it and cultivating it. So this is last slide. This big takeaway from my overlong TED talk for today: the church needs beautiful and skillful art. It needs it for its own growth as a body of believers, and because without art, we can't reach the world.